Welcome back to Between Two Webs, the Australian Music and NFTs podcast. I'm your host, Ian Rogers, and I'm once again joined by Dr. Ben Morgan. Are you Dr. Ben or are you Dr. Benjamin?
To publish, you have to use a fancy name that sticks out as much as you can. So I'm Ben. Call me Ben, please.
And are you having a good day, Ben? You happy to be here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is the fun part of everything for me is talking about the interesting things that we've learned, right? And
yeah.
I don't know about you, Ian, but I'm definitely surprised by some of the things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're finding here.
I'm enjoying the podcast too, because at first I was a bit apprehensive about how informal it was going to be. I had grand ideas that this would be a documentary style podcast series where we would talk to these people about making NFTs and we'd work with them. And then, as we'll get to in the fourth episode, our findings just do not match that type of story. That's not the story that we're here to tell. We're telling a slightly different story. And so I think just having the two of us like chatting away at this is a much more elegant and friendly face to what we're eventually going to get to in episode 4.
Yeah, and I'm way out of practice not writing ridiculously obtuse academic reports. So this is bringing me back down to planet Earth. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, good. Well, look, in the last episode, we laid the groundwork, I hope. We talked about what blockchain is, what Web3 is, and we discussed a few ideas about what an NFT represents. There was very little tech talk. We did a little bit, but that's mainly because we're from the humanities, you and I. I think that's broadly true. Do you identify that's where you're from?
Yeah, the economics part, social science, I thought maybe I belong there, but yeah, I want to talk about culture and meaning.
Yeah, same. Well, I think that's what we're here to do, is to unpack the culture and meaning of Web3 for Australian musicians, and because we can't code.
Yes.
Our little pocket of academia, Ben, is still coming to grips with Web3, isn't it?
Yeah. There's quite a bit of different kinds of research. If you go out and look for it, you can find some pretty enthusiastic and some pretty pessimistic stuff out there. But yeah, the popular music studies, people who want to talk about cultural and meaning, haven't seen too much. Haven't seen any of that, actually. Yeah.
No, that's right. So anyway, look, that's all preamble, because what I want to get to is the fact that Ben and I and a colleague, Dave Carter from New Zealand, Massey University, we all wrote a research paper last year that surveyed Web3 and music from, I think, an explicitly popular music studies point of view. And the paper is called Diminishing Dreams, the Scoping Down of the Music NFT. And I'll pop a link to it in the show notes because it's not behind a paywall. So everything that we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes, you can go and read more about this stuff if you choose to. In the paper, we talked about a few possible use cases for NFTs in the music industry. We're just trying to set the map, so to speak, of what this stuff can be used for. Do you remember what these use cases were, Ben? Can you remember how it all fit together?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
I mean, we only wrote it last year.
Yeah. Well, we definitely talked about digital collectibles and ownership as being the first thing people get. And it's really the area that we're swimming in this project still. But yeah, there was all kinds of chatter in 2021, 2022 about all the wild things people were promising. There's all kinds of the way to split payments and set up contracts and automate all kinds of things. Yes, but also unlocking things. The fan club, taking that to another level of you get access to a server that can then do things. And we were seeing, You Liked Avenged Sevenfold was one of the examples there. And there was some big acts exploring that. And I started seeing that people who bought an NFT were also expecting that there to be like a community element, and it was an ongoing project and you were involved with something that was a bit more than just owning an object. They were expecting there to be activities and incentives and all kinds of wild stuff that I really hadn't seen before. But there's also just a strong business to business fixing many of the system frictions, you might call it, of collecting revenues from various places through various organizations.
Well, look, I have the paper in front of me, so I can cheat and tell you what we actually said in the paper. Yeah, you covered it all. You did a good job, actually. I sprung that one on you.
I passed. Good.
We talked about 3 main buckets of use for NFTs in music. And the first one was, this sort of merchandise, sort of song and video style NFT. They're the most famous, well-known ones. These are NFTs from people like Grimes. And then, of course, it was extremely lucrative and got a lot of attention to her work, though she doesn't seem to suffer from a lack of attention for her work. She's very good at drumming up eyeballs. Snoop Dogg did one as well. Snoop came out, I think, last year he's a massive whale, we call it in the space. He's a big collector, has a massive collection of NFTs and is just a super nerd about it, which I just love the idea of Snoop Dogg sitting in his mansion somewhere, clicking around on OpenSea. And then, Steve Aoki did it. But there's actually a long list of people, The Weeknd, all these different artists did it. Then that's one subset, probably the most famous one. The second one was as investment items. So you can buy a Grimes NFT and that's an investment. That makes sense. But then there were also more explicit sort of things, like talking about buying a piece of someone's royalty streaming, for example. I think there's a company called Royal.io. I cannot remember the name of the artist for the life of me who runs this, but they started selling off portions or shares in a royalty of tracks by a whole bunch of prominent EDM artists. But there's also a whole bunch of other ways where investment is being examined, carved up, and distributed or democratized, to use that word, through Web3. These are experiments in that kind of stuff, some of which is like quite punk and cool as well. There's like a collectivist, let's share the money, let's take the friction away from these financial relationships and automate them and things like that. And then the final one we were really interested in is like using the tokens as entry passes or tickets into various things. The most obvious one is into a venue or to an event, but also as tokens to enter fan clubs, which you mentioned as well. And that space is growing since we wrote that paper. But even back then, the protocols around issuing a NFT and that NFT allowing you into new message boards that were hidden, that was actually pretty achievable. Like I could probably do it if I watched the right YouTube videos. So yeah, we're seeing that rollout of that kind of activity. That's where the landscape sits, right?
Yeah, you said investment, collectible. To me, that's the nicer word for the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Collectible, if you think more of kids in the baseball cards we were talking about last episode, but investment, I'm buying something that I expect to sell at some point in the future for more money. That's a bit interesting, right?
There's this kind of collection mentality. There's money and finance and return on investment floating around in it too, but it's all pretty conceptual. That's what we got to in the paper. We're like, there's a lot of ideas and not all of it is reality, or the thing that's exciting about it is the concept rather than the execution a lot of the times. But things got a bit more nuanced, or maybe even, I don't know, a bit less nuanced when we started talking to Australian musicians about Australian music NFTs. We specifically said things like, what would you do? What exists in the market at the moment? Do you know anyone who's made an NFT and things like that? Now, we interviewed 9 artists for the study, then a bunch of work that was made as part of an RMIT class here. Not explicitly, but I taught a class here on NFT making and buying and selling and so forth. And there was some work that was generated in there.
And just to clarify, you said 9 earlier and then you just said 10. So the funny one there is the RMIT group, right?
Yeah. So there's 9 real artists. And then there's me with some generative sound and a bunch of students helping. That's how we learned to do some of this. Like we had to step in at various points and either directly assist the musicians in making the NFTs, make them for them, or answer questions and things like that. And the only way I know anything about this space is through doing it and experimenting with it. And yeah, there's more NFTs attached to work that I've produced made by this project than the actual artists. There's tons of them spread all over OpenSea that some of them are mangled and no good. They're just experiments and trying to get it right. Because we were shepherding through the work of these people that we greatly respected and wanted to honor their time and to our little experiment. I was very cautious of not doing anything terribly wrong while we're doing it. Look, it's time again to hear some music. The track that we're going to hear from now is a Brisbane band called Tape Off, with a song that we mentored for them as part of this project. The track is called Work Xmas Party or Work Christmas Party, and it's available now where all good and bad NFTs are sold.
Self-control. I'm a pillar of self-control. I am a pillar of self-control.
What do you think, Ben? You're going to pick up a Tape Off NFT for yourself?
I would love to collect all these NFTs.
The musicians we spoke with often had no real idea what the utility or function of an NFT was outside of revenue collecting, i.e., types of merchandising, selling an NFT as a new product line related to their work in return for cryptocurrency, which is fine really, because some of the more sort of advanced use cases that we wrote about in our 2022 paper, involve quite sophisticated technical skills to execute them. And meanwhile, when we asked Australian musicians what we thought that they might actually be able to do with the technology right now, we got answers like this.
I know people who are interested, but I don't know anyone who's actually working in it.
Hmm. And you don't know anyone who's actually released an NFT yet?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I feel like maybe yes, in in my far away Instagram stratosphere. You know what I mean? When someone posts about something, but not really like anything that's very clear in my music world.
That's Beatrice, who was involved with what we were doing here. And Beatrice is involved with our project as a solo performer, but some of you may know her from her other project, Haiku Hands. Beatrice was not alone in this sense of not knowing anyone who's making NFTs in the music space or really knowing much about music NFTs generally. Ben?
Yeah. I think almost everyone talked about a friend who was doing things, but this is something I also, when I would interview people in my other research about streaming, I heard a lot, I know someone doing something. To me, that's messaging that they're aware of chatter, discourse, whatever you want to call it, but it's not yet coalesced into, I know someone who has launched a project.
Yeah.
So to me, it's being discussed. People know about it. There's probably someone out there who's more enthusiastic, but yeah, this is very common. Almost everyone talks about the friend.
Yeah, the mutual. Yeah, everyone's got a mutual who is doing something in the space, but I like the faraway land for Instagram. Like in the broad meadows of our Instagram feeds, there are people who are doing stuff in Web3. I think that's true for all of us. But yeah, this is how musicians learn, right? They observe what everyone else is doing. It's a communal practice. It's called a community of practice or a scene for a reason, which is that observing other people doing things is how knowledge gets passed around.
Yeah. And one thing very lacking here is observing someone here in Australia doing big things.
That's the thing.
That's something missing. I also want to mention, you mentioned Haiku Hands. Beatrice has 5 projects. And a common thing also noticing is most of these musicians are engaged in different, I call them artist brand projects. They have different expressions of an artistic identity, making different kinds of music.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, but I think I associate that with the curiosity and willingness to go ahead a little bit as well.
Yeah. We spoke to an artist that we're going to refer to as codename Charm Garden, or just Charm Garden, who knew quite a bit about the underlying technology. But when we went to Charm Garden and asked them about this idea of what do you do with a music NFT, they were similarly lost.
Honestly, from my point of view. I wouldn't even know where to start. Like I said, I kind of know what they are, but I wouldn't even know where to look. The concept's still quite foreign, I think. So let's just say I had a piece of music and it was like a mini video clip or something that I wanted to turn into an NFT. I wouldn't know even who to go through, how it's done, at what point does it become an NFT. I still don't really understand that, I think. So from the creation point of view, I think, just a lack of knowledge in the space. But then from the other side, further along the track, I think barriers would be, this is the biggest barrier I think with consumers, from a consumer point of view, actually encouraging consumers to use these new platforms, because they do require a level of knowledge that's probably above what most people have in terms of technology. And so that might put off artists from even trying to enter the space.
Super interesting answer, I reckon. CharmGuard knew a lot about how blockchain worked. They had done postgraduate study on culture making and things like that, and had gotten higher education, postgraduate training in some of these underlying technological aspects of what we're talking about here. They knew a lot about how it all worked, but you can hear the complete hesitation about what to do with it, how to implement it into an arts practice, right?
Yeah. When I started here, I understood on a conceptual level what all this stuff is supposed to do. But then once you get into how do I actually go and buy an NFT, for example, I had to completely rely on you to hold my hand through that when I started, I remember.
Yeah, it's such a curious part of this whole adventure, because CharmGuard puts it really wonderfully in that answer, because they carve it up into two sections. First, I just don't know what to do with this technology. I don't know anyone else who's doing it. I don't know any other musicians who are doing it. And then in the second half, and I would like to think this is the training really kicking in, immediately jump to something that all artists should be thinking about, is the audience. If there's no audience for it, if the audience can't get it done either, they don't know anyone who's buying the things or doing anything with the NFTs, then what is there for an artist in this? The two key stakeholders in an artist's career, which is the artist's ability to make and the artist's ability to consume or interact or critique or whatever you want to call it, don't seem to function. We don't see a lot of examples around us every day, do we, of these things?
No, and community of practice again. Having friends who are excited about this, maybe they're not making things, maybe they're collecting them. I heard a few times, I have someone trying to get me excited.
Yeah.
But what is really lacking is that looking around and seeing lots of people trying things.
Yeah.
That's not happening yet.
Yeah, there's evangelical users, power users almost of the space, who are a lot of fun and often trying desperately hard to onboard people into Web3, but it is tricky. Let's hear from some more of the musicians on this topic. We're going to hear now from Ben and Paige from the heavy metal rock band Worldsick from Melbourne.
Does anything interest you about the market for NFTs or NFTs in general, or is it, you're not interested in it?
No. I think it as a concept was it was always more just so much a scam. So put it this way, the coin market, the crypto market was a scam, is a scam that was built on the concept that, hey, if money has value, but that's not really pinned to anything, then why can't we make our own? And then NFT just sits on top going, well, why can't we just make other shit our own, value? And it's just getting to the point where it's so you can't hide the fact that it's closer to a pyramid scheme than it ever has been. So in that respect, I have no interest in it. it definitely seemed like one of those things where initially, if you were in before it was popular, you could make some cash, like, and laugh about how stupid it was that someone actually bought a picture of a monkey, you know, for $1 million or whatever. But it just doesn't seem to have any tangible value or, you know, base in reality anymore.
Those monkey NFTs are copping it. Part of me desperately just wants to leave that single response from Paige as being the only thing that she says in this whole podcast series. Let's hear it again.
No.
That's her. I think I'm going to leave that as being the only thing that Paige says. Okay, lastly, here's an artist that you spoke to, Ben, Electric Self, another mysterious artist. Self isn't anonymized, are they? Like, we're not anonymizing them. It's just an anonymous project.
I'm fascinated with this project outside of the research even, because it explores a lot of interesting things about the identity of being an artist. But yeah, we do need to be sure to conceal the voice.
Sure. Okay, well, let's hear what their feelings are on NFTs in terms of what they would actually do if they understood it all.
Yeah. Like limited runs of things, or like maybe like not, it's not like a Martin Shkreli Wu-Tang Clan thing, but it's like you might have a thing where, you know, only a small amount of people can buy it and then it's done. And also I know that the NFTs are sold for large amounts of money, kind of like an expensive painting might be.
The Wu-Tang comparison is interesting. That has come up before. And you mentioned monkeys. Is it the avatars online and people's profile pictures? Are those the monkeys you're talking about?
There's that monkey that I saw, and then people were mocking it in memes and stuff and saying like, what a great NFT or whatever. And I thought, well, is this something that people have bought just like this JPEG? Like, I don't know. And maybe like it's a package. Like I feel like maybe, yeah, there's some sort of, because I remember the Bungle one that happened was like they had footage on and stuff. But I never got it or saw it. I like listened to it. Someone leaked it.
I like this answer because it just goes everywhere. It's everything from the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I'm going to shout out to them because they're just trashing their project endlessly. And is it a video? Is it a this? I don't know. Is it a Martin Shkreli? Is it the Wu-Tang Clan? Is it Mr. Bungle? And then I like the end bit where he says, and then it just leaked anyway, so I didn't need to buy it. It's just such a stew of different ideas, right?
Yeah, the apes, the monkey thing, I think it's a good example of people find out that much. There's something about it they don't find appealing, and that's where a lot of people stop.
Yeah.
That monkey JPEG. So that's a very common recurring thing that people put NFTs in that, I'm not interested in this box because it's that.
Yeah. That's where it's the bad vibes, bad energy box.
Yeah.
The Martin Shkreli box, essentially.
Yeah. So the aura, I believe Ben Green would call it the aura of the Martin Shkreli buying the only possible existing CD of the Wu-Tang album and then deciding not to share it, keep it to himself. I think Ben has argued like that's an attempt, or maybe Wu-Tang was attempting to bring back the aura in the age of mechanical reproduction. Oh, we're getting deep there. But this idea that you could bring scarcity and have music be rare again. That's something that Wu-Tang experimented with. And this collector who bought it did not leak it.
It's it's a connection between Web3 and this previous example of this type of stuff that I never would have gotten to if I hadn't gone out and spoken to artists. Like, this is why we do field work, is to join these dots in our own thinking. I think that I just would never have conceived it before. But of course, there's so many precedents to this stuff in Web 2 and Web 1 and whatever was before, just life before the internet. I think we're covering it. So the takeaway is, and this is, to state or restate the somewhat obvious, is that there's a lot of confusion and hesitancy around what to actually do with NFTs in Australian music. Many of the musicians couldn't name a single other musician in their social network who was interested in the space. And this is a bigger deal than it may sound, because in Australian music, the social network is everything. The engine of the industry, in my professional academic opinion, for what it's worth, is social experience. It's mainly hobbyists making music as leisure and then occasionally spinning off a profitable professional act. That's how I view, that is my map of Australian music. So in Australia, what your mates are doing and what other bands in your community or scene are doing, that stuff really counts for everything. We'll explore the implications of this a bit further in the coming episodes, but in the next episode, we're going to dive into a case study of something very different. Two of our participants within our research were the exact opposite of the people that we heard from today. This was Slow Jack, a 20-year-old guy from Bendigo, and Dundo, who is something of an incumbent OG in music NFTs in Australia. These two people represent music NFT success stories, and in the coming episode, we'll tell you a bit about them and how they managed to forge quite a lucrative engagement with Web3. Until then, I'll see you later, Ben. Thanks for coming by.
It's always good to visit RMIT.
Always. And to take us out, we're going to hear from Electric Cell and their track, Coconut Crab.